Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've broken down the major trade, the first major trade of the MLB season that took place over the weekend between the Padres and the Marlins that sent Luis Arias to the Padres, joining an already stacked roster, the two-time batting champion, in exchange for a Korean relief pitcher in Double A and three of their top 15 prospects, number 6, number 9, and number 13 in the system. In this segment here, we are going to talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs. We had the final first round game happen over the weekend, and we had our beginning of the second round. We had one game happen in the second round uh, between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. We finished up our game 7 on Sunday. So we are officially set for the second round. We know all the players. There are games today, but we're going to break down everything that happened over the weekend, and then if we do have time, we will talk about some of the games today. We're going to start with game 7 because game 7 is a magical world, magical words in sports. Some of the most beautiful words. But before we get there, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave a donation to message in it. That message will pop at the bottom of this for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. Appreciate anything you do give. We appreciate all your comments and you guys taking time out of it to watch this show. Like I was saying, though, we are going to talk about basketball. The NBA full swing, made past the first round, and for the most part, we have seemingly weeded out the pretenders. Now, it's not necessarily true. I still think, especially in a weak Eastern Conference like it was this year, it's going to take another round of to get there. But in the West, I think we're just about there. I think we have the top 4 teams in the West still standing, and I think the playoffs this year did a really good job. And it's an interesting conversation to have. I know we were having it a little bit in the production meeting today, but this season really feels like the changing of the guard season. You know, it's been coming for a while, and it's really curious. It's a really curious time in sports because not only is it in basketball that there's a changing of a guard, but you see it in almost all of the major American sports. You know, in basketball, you have the end legendary careers of the old era, the late 2000s, 2010s. All those guys are starting to go. You know, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, all these guys, Russell Westbrook, you know, I keep going more names, but these guys are reaching the end of their career and they are making way for the next season. You know, in hockey, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin are making ways for these new guys. In football, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, all these guys of yesterday, they have retired in the last couple seasons, and they make way for Patrick Mahomes and all these new guys to come in, rule league. And, you know, even to extent in baseball, it's not quite as much in baseball as it is in a lot of other sports, but you see some of that changing guard in a lot of the major American sports nowadays. And it's a really fascinating time because you can almost feel the era shift, right? And not a lot of defining moments like this. You know, you look at the NBA playoffs right now, and there's not a single superstar that's over the age of 30 that is still around. Every single one is younger. Around the team. I know Kyrie still is kind of in that older era, but he's a number 2 on that team. Excuse me. Every single one of those main guys are super young. You know, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and the entire Thunder team, the youngest team in NBA history to be a 1 seed. You know, the Luka-led Mavs, the Jokic and his team with Denver Nuggets and Jamal Murray and everybody with that, and the team that they're playing in Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And even in the East, it's kind of the same thing. You have your Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown led Celtics taking on the Donovan Mitchell, which is Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs, and then at the bottom you have Jalen against Halliburton and the Pacers. You know, these are all young guys that are headlining the series. These are all guys that 5 years ago you either had never heard of or were like, oh, they seem like interesting rookies. You know, these guys are, and it evolves. That's how sports are. We see it at a certain point, but it's really cool sitting here at the crossroads between these two eras, between the old Steph Curry, LeBron James era, and this new Luka Jokic, era. That's we'll see who emerges as those top guys in this era. But it's really cool to me to see a changing of the guard happen. Over the weekend, we had a game 7 in which Donovan Mitchell and the Cavaliers were able to clean up against against the Magic in a series that really was just ugly from start to finish. I don't think this team really stands much of a chance against the Celtics. Their offense goes quiet too often. I know I've hammered this home point too much. The Magic are going to be really good. They really took a big step forward. All their young talent was there. Paolo Banchero was hobbling around at the end of that game, and he was giving it all. He's reset the spotlight. Jalen Suggs has been a huge part. The Franz Wagner has been really, really good. That Magic team's going to be good. They're fun. They're exciting. They just need to figure out how to. They probably were the team in that series. They were the more consistent team. The Cavs, the bring that same energy on that they had at home. And once they learn how to do that, they can be a dangerous team. This is not their year, but they're going to continue to. The Cavs to go play the Cavs look to go play the Celtics and expect to be over in 4 or 5 games. The other series that ended that we know for sure, the Mavericks took down the Clippers. The Clippers ran out of gas. We talk about it changing the guard, and that really was kind of a microcosm of the whole league. You got in Luka Doncic, to a lesser extent, going against team filled with the old legends. Paul George, Russell, Wyatt Leonard, all guys that were the faces, shining stars of the league, and multiple MVP, 4 MVPs on that team. 3. Excuse me. These guys are legends of the game. They're on the team, but they're older now, and they're not the same. They don't have that same gap. We saw them just kind of run out of steam at the end of that series, and like I was saying at the beginning of this segment, it kind of shows the changing of the guard in the NBA, and it has to happen. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. It's exciting to see news enter, and change is a good thing. It doesn't always seem like it in the moment, but change always, not always, innovation and things to happen. The game is constantly evolving. We're seeing new types of players style enter the league nowadays. They're going to take over soon. The game that we grew up with is going to change, and it's probably going to change for the better. It's going to get more fun, more physical, more fast, more exciting. And I'm very excited for that to happen in basket. But here in the second round, we've had our first game of one of those series that I'm really, really excited to see. A clash of 2 titans in the Western Conference. The Nuggets and the Timberwolves matched up their first game of the series on Saturday. The Timberwolves took that game behind Anthony Edwards' 43. Anthony Edwards has dropped 40-plus points in 2 straight playoff games. He has been phenomenal. There's been so much coverage of him. People have been comparing him to Michael Jordan, and he just plays with so much passion. It's so much fun to watch that guy play basketball. It doesn't happen that often, especially in a professional setting, where you see a guy that is able to dominate the way that Anthony Edwards has been dominating and still play with that goofy excitement, pure joy that he has on the court. There were times in that game that he looked tired. In game 1, I believe that near the end of the first half, or the first quarter, I don't remember, there was a possession where his teammates were yelling at the court on offensive possession, and he took his time. He strolled to get up the court. It was basically 4-on-5 for a while, and then he took a bad shot. It's fine. The air is thin in Denver. They were able to steal a Denver, and it's because Denver started. And prop Timberwolves for being, even after Denver back to control game basics, extend the lead again, because Denver had a stretch, and in that fourth quarter, they came all the way back, and they left them in the dust. Anthony Edwards was phenomenal. Naz Reid was huge down the stretch for them. He at one point had a run where I believe he scored like 10 straight points for them. He had a bank 3, had a putback dunk, a tough and one, and then another 3. He was huge in that fourth quarter. The Timberwolves didn't win that game without Naz Reid. Not enough people are talking about that for good reason. Anthony Edwards was phenomenal, and he should get all his props. Give him all his flowers. Anthony Edwards is a joy to watch. But that Timberwolves team isn't a team you can take lightly, and the Nuggets know that. The Nuggets saw that in game 1. They lost one at home. The Nuggets don't lose games at home. They're 33-8 at home on the year. The Nuggets don't lose games in Denver, and they just lost one. We fired up Timberwolves team, most successful Timberwolves team in 2 decades. Kevin Garnett was up with the Wolves. This is the most successful team, and they're playing with passion and energy and joy, and they're having fun. And as I kind of touched on in the San Diego Padres section, it's not just about baseball where that matters. As good of a player as Jokic is, and as well of a machine as that Nuggets team is, and they enjoy playing each other. Jokic still has fun while he's playing. Just it's a job. He'd rather go be on the countryside with his horses, and Anthony Edwards would rather be nowhere else than dominating the basketball court. And you kind of see a really interesting split between these two guys, and that's one of the reasons why this series is so fascinating to me. You have these two guys that have almost opposite demeanor, and it's just really cool to see. So, taking a look at these series, they play Game 2 tonight. Game 2 in Denver. Like I said, Timberwolves took Game 1. It was a super fun game. This series should be a lot of fun. Denver knows what they're up against now. If that Game 1 wasn't a wake-up call to them, I don't know what it'll be. Like I was saying in my analysis on Friday of the series, Denver was still sleepwalking through that Lakers series. They sleptwalked through the regular season. They sleptwalked to the number 2. That's how good they are. They sleptwalked through that Lakers series. They did it in 5 games. They had some tight games, but they never really felt the pressure. After Game 1, I think they're starting to feel that pressure. You could see that sense of urgency start to come back to them at the end of that fourth quarter. They were trying to come back desperately in that game, and they couldn't do it. This was the first time they weren't able to do it all season, all playoffs long, and that might light a fire under them. I'm really curious to see how they come out today. If they come out flat again, I mean, in the beginning of the game, they were down by like 13 points. They came out flat. Now, granted, they came all the way back. They took a lead in that first quarter, so they were able to respond. But I'd love to see the Nuggets come back with that passion, play the way they can play the way they can for an entire game. If they do that, the Nuggets are going to be really, really hard to stop. And the Timberwolves have won a sleeping giant. And if the Timberwolves can beat that giant asleep, it's a little one way in this way. I will know. You will see it. There is going to be a switch that's going to be flipped in this series at some point. The question is whether or not it's going to be too late. It's not to stand against this Timberwolves because of this Timberwolves team. I was just talking about Anthony Edwards. You still have Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels defensively on the outside, Naz Reid off the bench, and in all of these, Cat kind of gets shoved aside as like, oh, he's there. Cat's really good at basketball. Karl-Anthony Towns is no one to be forgotten about. He's really good. And that Wolves team is really, really good. But this Nuggets team, when they're firing on all cylinders and when they're ready to go, when they're rearing their wake, it's almost impossible to stop them. So I'm really curious to see what it's going to take, how it's going to take for the Nuggets to wake up. Because if they don't wake up soon, they're in serious trouble. One game is enough of a cushion. If they go down 2-0 and they're still not convinced, if I'm still not convinced that they're awake, it could spell a lot of trouble, especially going back. So they could also, they've won 30 games at home this year. They're 30-11 at home. They've been really good at home. Yeah, both of these teams are really at home. Home court advantage is a real thing in a lot of sports, and the NBA, excuse me, as we've seen throughout this entire playoffs, is no different. The other second round game that we have today, the game of Pacers-Knicks, that's going to be interesting. We've talked about it before. The Knicks should win this series. Jalen Brunson can outduel anybody, but if the Pacers can pull a Game 2 Miami Heat, they can win any game. The Pacers have the ability to shoot 50% from 3 on any night. And if they do shoot 50% from 3, any night they do that, I expect to win. Knicks are a good team. They're not an elite team, They're just too hurt for that. And people are counting out the Pacers. Don't count out the Pacers. A team that if they get hot is the more in sports basketball. We've seen it multiple times. The Heat went on that tear last season where they 50% from the entire playoffs till the finals when they finally cooled down. The Pacers have the ability to be that team that can do that. So don't just look at this and say, oh, he's no chance. They do. They have a chance. It's not a great chance, but it's something that they can pull off. If they can shoot well, they absolutely have a shot to win this series. I still have the Knicks winning this series. There's a lot more to go over, but we'll keep an eye on all these second-round series throughout the rest of the week. Coming up in our third segment here, we are going to move into the NHL. We're going to finish off our show talking about hockey. The second round is set, so we're going to do second-round predictions to close out our show. But at the third segment here, we're going to talk about 2 electric Game 7s that took place over the weekend, setting up that second round. We're going to talk about everything that's been going around the world of sports, around hockey. Stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.